The winding stretch of Highway 36 in Northern California is a lonely road. It cuts through a landscape of dense forests and rugged hills, a place where the towering pines seem to hold ancient secrets. For most travelers, it is simply a path from one point to another, a ribbon of asphalt forgotten as soon as it disappears in the rearview mirror. But on July 17, 2019, this quiet corner of Tehama County became the unwilling keeper of a dark and disturbing mystery. The day began like any other, with the sun casting long shadows through the trees and the air holding the crisp scent of pine. A local couple, taking advantage of the summer weather, decided to venture off the beaten path for a hike, their footsteps the only sound breaking the serene silence of the woods. What they found would shatter that peace forever. Not far from the highway, tucked away from casual view, was a patch of earth that looked wrong. It was disturbed, the soil freshly turned in a way that spoke not of nature but of hurried, deliberate action. An unsettling odor hung heavy in the air, a scent that was primal and deeply alarming. Their initial curiosity quickly turned to dread. This was not the work of an animal digging for roots, it was something else, something human. With trembling hands they dialed 911. Their voices low and strained as they reported their discovery. They knew with a certainty that chilled them to the bone that they had stumbled upon a grave. When authorities arrived, the scene was cordoned off with yellow tape, a stark and jarring intrusion into the natural landscape. The officers and forensic specialists worked with a grim and practiced efficiency, their faces set in stoic masks. They carefully excavated the shallow grave, brushing away the soil with meticulous care. Underneath the loose dirt they found a young woman's body. She was wrapped in a simple white sheet, a makeshift shroud that offered no dignity, only concealment. There was no purse, no wallet, no form of identification to give her a name. She was a ghost, an anonymous figure left behind in the wilderness, stripped of her identity and her story. The discovery sent a ripple of shock through the small, tight-knit communities of Tehama County. This was a place where people knew their neighbors, where violent crime was something seen on the news, not found in their own backyard. The idea that a life could be so callously discarded along one of their familiar roads was a violation, a terrifying intrusion into their world of perceived safety. Who was she? Where did she come from? And who had left her here alone in the silent woods? The questions began to multiply, each one deepening the sense of unease. A young woman was dead, and her secrets were buried with her, leaving investigators with nothing but a body and a profound, haunting mystery. In the sterile environment of the coroner's office, the search for answers began. The young woman's body was examined for any clue, any small detail that might whisper her name or hint at the circumstances of her death. Investigators found no obvious signs of trauma, no wounds that would immediately explain how she had died. Her clothes were gone, leaving behind only the stark reality of her anonymous form. She was young, estimated to be between the ages of 18 and 25. Her features suggested she was possibly of Hispanic or mixed-race heritage, but these were broad categories, a description that could fit thousands of young women, offering little to narrow the search. Then they found it. On her right ankle was a single distinguishing mark. It was a tattoo rendered in crisp black ink with delicate shading. A single rose, its petals in full bloom, was entwined with a thorny stem. The artwork was high quality, the lines clean and professional. It was also fresh, likely inked only a few weeks before her death. This small piece of body art became the central clue in a case that had almost none. A rose tattoo. It was both a symbol of beauty and a painful reminder of the thorns of life. For the investigators, it was a beacon of hope, the one unique feature that might help them reclaim her name from the darkness. The autopsy provided more pieces to the puzzle, but they only deepened the enigma. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation, a quiet and violent end that left few external marks. There were no drugs in her system, ruling out an overdose. Furthermore, she showed no signs of long-term abuse or neglect. In fact, the evidence suggested quite the opposite. She had recent high-quality dental work, crowns and fillings that would have been expensive. This was not a person who lived on the streets or was disconnected from society. Someone at some point had cared for her. Someone had paid for her dental visits. This contradiction was baffling to the detectives. On one hand, she had been cared for, suggesting a stable life. On the other, she was found discarded in a shallow grave, with no one coming forward to report her missing. It didn't make sense. Police artists created sketches of her face, digital renderings that attempted to breathe life back into her features. These images were circulated to law enforcement agencies and media outlets across the state and beyond. But weeks turned into months, and no one recognized her. Her face, her story, her name, all remained lost. The case of the girl with the rose tattoo officially went cold. As the investigation stalled, the unnamed woman became a local legend, a ghost story whispered in the small towns of Tehama County. She was Jane Doe, a clinical designation that felt cold and insufficient. To the community, she was more than that. She was the girl found off Highway 36, a symbol of a mystery that had taken root in their collective consciousness. People speculated about her story in hushed tones at diners and grocery stores. Was she a runaway who had met a terrible fate? Was she a victim of a crime that had passed through their quiet county like a phantom? The lack of answers was a heavy weight, an open wound that refused to heal. For the investigators in the Tehama County Sheriff's Office, the case was a constant, nagging presence. Her file remained open on their desks, a testament to their frustration. They had followed every lead, exhausted every database. They checked missing persons reports from California and neighboring states, searching for any young woman who matched her description, but every search came up empty. It was as if she had materialized out of thin air, only to be erased just as quickly. The rose tattoo, once a promising clue, led them down countless dead ends. Tattoo parlors were canvassed, but no artist recognized their work or recalled a client fitting her profile. The silence was the most damning part of it all. In the digital age, it seemed impossible for someone to simply vanish without a trace. People leave digital footprints, social media posts, phone records, bank transactions, yet this Jane Doe had none. Or if she did, they were not connected to the identity she carried in death. The fact that no family member, no friend, no concerned co-worker had come forward was perhaps the most chilling aspect of the case. It suggested a profound isolation. Was there truly no one in the world who was looking for her? Or was there someone who knew she was gone but was too afraid or too complicit to speak up? Years passed and the case file grew thicker with reports and dead-end leads, but no closer to a resolution. The Jane Doe of Tehama County was on the verge of becoming another forgotten statistic, one of the thousands of unidentified bodies that lie in morgues and unmarked graves across the country. Her story was a tragedy defined by its anonymity. She was a ghost not only because she was dead, but because she had no name, no past, and no one to mourn her. The town remained haunted by the question that lingered in the silent woods where she was found. Who was she? And who would ever speak for her? For 3 long years, the case of the Tehama County Jane Doe remained frozen in time, a collection of unanswered questions gathering dust in a file cabinet. Investigators had done everything by the book, but the book had led them nowhere. The trail had gone cold almost as soon as it began, leaving behind a profound sense of failure and a nameless grave. Then in 2022, the case was reignited from the most unexpected of places, the vibrant, fast-paced world of social media. The platform was TikTok, a universe of viral dances, life hacks, and, in this instance, amateur sleuthing. A user with the handle @TruthSeeker47 had a passion for unsolved mysteries, creating short, compelling videos about cold cases from around the country. Their goal was to bring fresh eyes to forgotten stories. One of their videos focused on unidentified victims. In a rapid-fire montage of sketches and digital reconstructions, the face of the Tehama County Jane Doe appeared on millions of phone screens. For a few seconds, her digitally rendered eyes stared out at the world, her story summarized in a few lines of text on the screen. Found 2019, Tehama County, California. Rose tattoo on ankle. Who is she? It was one of dozens of cases featured in the clip. A fleeting image in a sea of digital content. For most viewers, it was just another sad story to be swiped past. But for one person, that image was a lightning bolt, a shocking moment of recognition that would change everything. hours after the video was posted, a comment appeared that cut through the noise of speculation and condolences. It was from a young user, a teenager from Phoenix, Arizona. Her words were simple but carried an immense weight. "That looks like my cousin Elena. She went missing in 2018 in Phoenix." Initially, the comment was lost in the flood of others. In the world of online true crime, such claims are not uncommon, often born of wishful thinking or a desire for attention, but this user was persistent. She wasn't just speculating, she seemed certain. She replied to other commenters, insisting on the resemblance, her digital voice filled with a desperate urgency. This single comment acted as a tiny spark in the cold, dark expanse of the case. It was a fragile lead, born not in a detective's office, but in the algorithm of a social media app. Yet it was more than the Tehama County Sheriff's Office had had in years. The online community took notice and the comment quickly gained traction, with other users encouraging the girl to provide more information. The case of the girl with the rose tattoo was no longer just a local tragedy, it was becoming a viral mystery. The digital world had inadvertently cast a new wide net, and it was about to pull in a name that had been missing for years. The initial skepticism surrounding the teenager's comment began to dissolve when she took the next step. To prove she was serious, she created her own video. It was a simple side-by-side comparison, a format common on the platform. On one side of the screen was the police sketch and digital rendering of the 2019 Jane Doe. On the other, she placed a series of photographs of her missing cousin, Elena Reyes. The music was somber, the mood respectful. As the photos of Eleanor flashed by, a smiling graduation picture, a candid selfie, a family portrait, the resemblance was more than just passing. It was startling. It was uncanny. The two faces shared the same high cheekbones, the same shape of the eyes, and a similar jawline. Even in the sterile, stylized form of a police sketch, the essence of Eleanor's features seemed to be there. The digital rendering, which added color and texture, made the connection even stronger. It was like looking at two versions of the same person, one full of life and the other a haunting echo. The video silently and powerfully made its case. This was not a vague likeness, this was a potential match that was too strong to be ignored. The online community was captivated, sharing the video thousands of times, tagging news outlets and true crime creators. But it was the final image in the video that delivered the most chilling blow. The cousin had found a photo of Eleanor at the beach, taken shortly before she disappeared. In the picture, Eleanor was laughing, her ankle propped up on her knee, and there, on her right ankle, was a tattoo. It was a rose, a single rose, entwined with a thorny stem. It matched the description released by the Tehama County Sheriff's Office perfectly. The visual evidence was overwhelming. The chances of two different young women, both missing, having such a specific and matching tattoo seemed astronomically small. It was the piece of the puzzle that elevated the theory from plausible speculation to a credible, urgent lead. The video went viral, exploding across TikTok and spilling over onto other social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. It was a masterclass in modern-day crowdsourced investigation. Within 3 days, it had amassed over 3 million views. Reporters, sensing a major development in a long cold case, began reaching out to the family. What had started as a single hopeful comment from a teenage girl had snowballed into a national news story. The ghost of Tehama County was no longer nameless. For the first time, she had a potential identity, Elena Reyes. And with that name came a new story, a new history, and a family that had been waiting in agonizing silence. The Reyes family never wanted the attention that came with the viral TikTok video. For years, they lived with the agony of Elena's disappearance, her sudden move to California, the boyfriend no one met, the texts that stopped after a week. Their missing persons report led nowhere. Eleanor had vanished without a trace. Flyers, calls, and endless searching brought only silence. When the Jane Doe sketch and rose tattoo surfaced online, their worst fears solidified. This was likely Elena. The news was both a relief and a heartbreak, closure, but at the cost of hope. Their daughter was gone, her story ending far from home. The rose tattoo seemed to confirm Jane Doe was Elena until the family revealed Elena didn't have it when she left. Photos proved her ankle was bare before she disappeared. The tattoo was fresh, done nearly a year after she vanished. Where had she been? Who was she with? The tattoo became a clue to a hidden life. Investigators suspected the mysterious boyfriend. Was the tattoo a gift or a mark of control? In some circles, tattoos are brands, not art. The case shifted. Eleanor hadn't just vanished. She'd lived a secret life, ending in tragedy. Now detectives had to confirm her identity and uncover what happened in that lost year. Tehama County investigators tried everything to identify Jane Doe: fingerprints, dental records, national databases, no matches. She was a ghost in the system. Dental work led nowhere. Her history was locked away, unreachable. Her case entered national missing persons systems, but no connections surfaced. Months turned to years. The file grew cold. Detectives felt the weight of failure, so many tools, but no name. Jane Doe remained lost, her story untold. With no forensic leads, investigators turned to art, a forensic sketch, then a digital facial reconstruction. The images were haunting, lifelike, and widely shared. Tip lines lit up, but every lead fizzled. Even advanced technology couldn't break the silence. How could a face so real be unknown to everyone? The digital Jane Doe became a ghost online, her plea for recognition unanswered. Whoever knew her wasn't coming forward or wasn't seeing the news. The mystery deepened, a face but still no name. The evidence was a study in contradictions. Jane Doe was well cared for, good teeth, no signs of neglect, expensive tattoo. Yet she was buried in a shallow grave, discarded like trash. Someone valued her, then erased her. The fresh tattoo suggested recent stability, but also possible control or branding. Was she loved or owned, protected or isolated? Each clue clashed with the next, leaving investigators with only questions. Until the contradictions were resolved, her story and her name remained out of reach. The investigation into the Tehama County Jane Doe was not for a lack of effort. Over the first year, hundreds of leads were generated and meticulously pursued. Every time a young woman of similar age and description was reported missing in California or a neighboring state, detectives would pull the file. They would compare timelines, physical characteristics, and dental records. They cross-referenced their case with dozens of others, hoping to find an overlap, a connection that would finally give their victim a name. Each comparison, however, ended in a dead end, methodically ruling out one missing person after another. The process was a slow and frustrating exercise in elimination. Beyond official channels, the public appeals brought in a flood of tips from well-meaning citizens. People called in with theories, with vague recollections of a young woman they saw at a gas station, or with concerns about a neighbor who had suddenly moved away. Investigators treated every tip with diligence, understanding that even the most unlikely story could hold a kernel of truth. They spent countless hours tracking down flimsy leads, interviewing potential witnesses who had little to offer, and chasing down rumors that evaporated upon closer inspection. This exhaustive work, while necessary, yielded nothing but more frustration, thickening the case file with reports that ultimately led nowhere. The silence from the world of tattoo artistry was particularly deafening. The rose tattoo was their most distinctive clue, a piece of custom art. Investigators believed the artist who created it would surely remember the design and the young woman who wore it. They distributed high-resolution photos of the tattoo to parlors and artist conventions throughout California, Arizona, and Nevada. They posted it on online forums dedicated to tattoo art. Yet no one came forward to claim the work. This suggested several possibilities, all of them grim. The artist was not a licensed professional. They worked in the criminal underworld, or they were simply too afraid to get involved, knowing what had become of their client. The case eventually settled into a cold, quiet stasis. The leads dried up, the phone stopped ringing, and the file was moved from the active desk to the cold case cabinet. For the detectives, it was a constant, low-grade ache. The knowledge that a killer was free and a young woman lay in a morgue, her identity still a mystery to the world. They had a body, a cause of death, and a single beautiful clue inked on her skin. But they were surrounded by a wall of silence. The 1,000 leads had amounted to nothing, and the ghost of Highway 36 remained just that, a nameless spectre waiting for someone somewhere to finally speak her name. For 3 long, fruitless years, the case of the Tehama County Jane Doe remained frozen in time, a collection of unanswered questions gathering dust in a cold case file. Investigators had followed every traditional protocol, but the established methods had led them to a dead end. The trail had gone cold almost as soon as it began, leaving behind a profound sense of failure and a nameless woman in a morgue drawer. Then, in the fall of 2022, the case was unexpectedly jolted back to life from the most modern of sources, the vibrant, fast-paced world of social media. The platform was TikTok, a universe of viral dances, life hacks, and, in this instance, dedicated amateur sleuthing that would prove more effective than years of police work. A user with the handle at TruthSeeker47, known for a passion for unsolved mysteries, had been creating short, compelling videos about cold cases from across the country. Their goal was simple yet powerful: to bring fresh eyes to forgotten stories, hoping the vast reach of the internet could achieve what official channels could not. One of their videos focused on unidentified victims, a rapid-fire montage of sketches and digital reconstructions. For a few fleeting seconds, the face of the Tehama County Jane Doe appeared on millions of phone screens. Her digitally rendered eyes stared out, her story summarized in a few lines of text. Found 2019. Tehama County, California, rose tattoo on ankle. Who is she? It was just one of dozens of cases featured in the clip. A momentary image in a sea of digital content that most viewers would swipe past without a second thought. But for one person, that image was a lightning bolt, a shocking and visceral moment of recognition that would pivot the entire investigation. Hours after the video was posted, a comment appeared that cut through the noise of speculation and condolences. It was from a young user, a teenager from Phoenix, Arizona. Her words were simple, but carried an immense weight that she likely did not yet comprehend. "That looks like my cousin Elena. She went missing in 2018 in Phoenix." Initially, the comment was just one among hundreds, easily lost in the flood. In the world of online true crime forums, such claims are not uncommon, often born from wishful thinking or a desire for attention, but this user was persistent. She wasn't just speculating, she seemed absolutely certain, replying to other commenters with a desperate urgency that felt genuine. This single comment acted as a tiny spark in the cold, dark expanse of the case. It was a fragile lead, born not in a detective's office but in the algorithm of a social media app. The digital world had inadvertently cast a new wide net, and it was about to pull in a name investigators had sought for years. The initial skepticism surrounding the teenager's comment began to dissolve when she took a courageous next step. To prove she was serious and to amplify her plea, she created her own video. It was a simple side-by-side comparison, a format common on the platform but used here with devastating effect. On one side of the screen was the police sketch and the advanced digital rendering of the 2019 Jane Doe. On the other, she placed a series of cherished photographs of her missing cousin, Elena Reyes. The music she chose was somber and respectful, setting a tone of grief and determination. As the photos of Elena flashed by, a smiling graduation picture, a candid selfie, a family portrait, the resemblance became undeniable. The two faces shared the same high cheekbones, the same almond shape of the eyes, and an identical, delicate jawline. Even in the sterile, stylized form of a police sketch, the essence of Eleanor's features seemed to be captured. The digital rendering, which added lifelike color and texture, made the connection even more powerful and chilling. It was like looking at two versions of the same person, one vibrant and full of life, the other a haunting, silent echo. The video silently and powerfully made its case without needing narration. This was not a vague likeness, this was a potential match that was far too strong to be a mere coincidence. But it was the final image in the video that delivered the most critical piece of evidence. The cousin had unearthed a photo of Elena at the beach, taken shortly before she had disappeared from their lives. In the picture, Elena was laughing, her right ankle propped up on her knee as she sat on the sand. And there, clearly visible on her skin, was a tattoo. It was a single rose, its petals in bloom, entwined with a thorny stem. It matched the description released by the Tehama County Sheriff's Office with perfect accuracy. The visual evidence was overwhelming, and the online community immediately recognized its significance. The chances of two different young women, both missing, having such a specific tattoo were astronomically small. The video went viral, exploding across TikTok and spilling over onto other social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, where it was shared by true crime influencers and news aggregators. It was a masterclass in modern-day crowdsourced investigation, achieving in hours what had been impossible for years. Within 3 days, it had amassed over 3 million views. Reporters, sensing a major development in a long, cold case, began reaching out to the family. The ghost of Tehama County was no longer nameless. For the first time, she had a potential identity, a name that carried a story and a family's profound grief. Elena Reyes. As the TikTok video continued its viral spread, the Reyes family was suddenly thrust into a harsh and unwelcome public spotlight. For 4 years, they had lived with the quiet, gnawing pain of not knowing what had happened to their beloved Elena. Speaking to reporters, they confirmed the story that had been pieced together online by internet sleuths. In the fall of 2018, at the age of 19, Elena had announced she was leaving their Phoenix home. She was moving to California to live with a new boyfriend, a man she had met online but had never introduced to her family, a fact that had always worried them deeply. They had begged her to be careful, but Elena was an adult, full of youthful confidence. That confidence seemed tragically misplaced. For the first week after she left, she sent a few sporadic text messages, their content vague but reassuring. Then, the messages stopped. Her phone began going straight to voicemail. Days turned into weeks, and a chilling, impenetrable silence descended. The Reyes family did what any family would do. They filed a missing persons report with the Phoenix Police Department. But with so little information to go on, Elena was an adult who had left willingly, and her mysterious boyfriend's identity was completely unknown. The official investigation struggled to gain any traction at all. Her life had gone dark. The family's own search was a journey through a specific kind of hell. They printed flyers with her smiling face, contacted all of her old friends, and spent countless nights scrolling through social media, desperately searching for any sign of her digital ghost. But there was nothing. The absolute lack of information was a unique form of torture, leaving them suspended in a horrible limbo between hope and despair. They clung to the fading hope that one day she would simply walk back through their front door. But as the years passed, that hope was slowly eroded, replaced by a deep and unspoken fear for her safety and her life. When Elena's cousin showed them the Jane Doe sketch and the photo of the rose tattoo, that amorphous fear crystallized into a sickening, heartbreaking certainty. It was the answer they had been dreading for 4 long years. While they had never stopped searching for Elena, they had never connected her disappearance to an unidentified body found a year later in another state. The news, delivered through the strange and impersonal medium of a viral video, was a devastating blow. It offered the potential for closure, but at the cost of confirming their worst nightmare. Their daughter, their sister, their cousin was likely gone forever. The discovery of Elena's matching tattoo seemed to be the final, definitive piece of evidence that would close the loop. It connected the missing girl from Arizona to the Jane Doe in California with what appeared to be undeniable photographic proof. However, as detectives from both states began to collaborate and share their case files, a bizarre and deeply unsettling detail emerged that changed everything. The Reyes family, in their effort to help, provided investigators with every photo they had of Elena, including several taken in the days and even hours just before she packed her bags and left Phoenix for good. In all of those pictures, her ankle was completely bare. There was no rose tattoo. This shocking revelation added a perplexing new layer to the mystery. Elena Reyes did not have the tattoo when she went missing. This forced investigators to re-examine their entire timeline and every assumption they had made. The forensic pathologist who examined the Jane Doe had determined that the tattoo was fresh, likely done only a few weeks or at most a month before her death in the summer of 2019. Elena had disappeared in the fall of 2018. This meant that for nearly a year she was alive, living somewhere in secret, and at some point during that lost year she got the intricate rose tattoo that would ultimately identify her body. This period, the gap between her disappearance from Phoenix and her death in Northern California, was a complete and a total blank. Where had she been living? Who was she with during those hidden months, and what were the circumstances that led her to get that specific tattoo? The tattoo was no longer just a simple marker of identification. It was now a critical clue, a breadcrumb leading back into her hidden life and, they hoped, toward her killer. It suggested a significant event or relationship had marked her in that final year, a year when she was completely cut off from everyone who knew and loved her. The fact that she acquired the tattoo after leaving home deepened the family's fears about the man she had supposedly run away to be with. This mysterious, unnamed boyfriend was the only known link to her new life. He was the person who likely isolated her from her family and controlled her communications. Investigators began to suspect that he was also the one who had either paid for or coerced her into getting the tattoo. Was it a twisted gift, or was it something far more sinister? In the dark world of human trafficking, such tattoos are sometimes used as a brand, a permanent mark of ownership. The beautiful rose may have been a symbol of a gilded cage, one that ultimately became her tomb. With the powerful lead generated by social media, the investigation shifted from speculation to scientific verification. The Tehama County Sheriff's Office, now collaborating closely with detectives in Phoenix, moved swiftly to get the definitive proof they needed. The first and most crucial step was DNA analysis. Authorities requested a familial DNA sample from Elena's mother, a process that was both a source of hope for answers and a moment of profound dread for the Reyes family. Providing the sample was an act of finality, an acknowledgement that the young woman found in that shallow grave was very likely her daughter. The wait for the results was an agonizing period, filled with a tension that had been building for 4 long years. The initial results came back from the lab with a powerful, though not yet legally conclusive finding. The comparison between Jane Doe's DNA and the sample from Elena's mother revealed a partial familial match. This meant that the unidentified woman was undeniably a close biological relative, a daughter, a sister, or a cousin. Given the context and the uncanny physical resemblance, the probability that she was anyone other than Elena Reyes was infinitesimally small. For the investigators, this was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. While a full, definitive DNA profile would take more time to construct and verify, this partial match provided them with the certainty they needed to move forward with the investigation under one operating assumption: Jane Doe was Elena. Parallel to the DNA testing, another crucial piece of evidence was being re-examined: the victim's dental records. Previously, the search had been a shot in the dark, a nationwide query with no name to guide it. Now, with Elena's identity tentatively established, investigators could conduct a targeted search. They obtained Elena's dental records from her family dentist in Phoenix. The comparison was stunning. The charts aligned with remarkable precision. The position of each filling, the specific tooth that had a crown, it all matched the forensic odontologist's examination of the Jane Doe. It was another layer of scientific certainty, a story told by molars and bicuspids that corroborated the story told by DNA. The combination of the partial DNA match and the near-perfect dental record alignment provided investigators with what they called 90% certainty. While they awaited the final legal confirmation, they no longer had any operational doubts. The ghost of Highway 36 finally had a name. She was Elena Reyes, a 19-year-old girl from Arizona who had vanished into a dark world that ultimately consumed her. The focus of the case now pivoted dramatically. The question was no longer who is she, but a far more chilling one. What happened to Elena, and who is responsible for her death? The search for a name was over. The hunt for a killer had just begun. With Elena's identity all but confirmed, investigators delved back into the digital breadcrumbs she had left behind. They reanalyzed her phone records from 2018, this time with a new geographical focus: California. The final pings from her phone, which had previously been a dead end, now told a chilling story. The last signal before her phone went dark for good did not come from a random location. It originated from a specific exclusive area, a wealthy gated suburb in Northern California, not far from where her body would eventually be discovered. The signal was traced to a multi-million-dollar estate, a sprawling property hidden behind high walls and elaborate security systems. The owner of this mansion was a man named Mark Landon. This name immediately set off alarm bells. Landon was not just a wealthy businessman, he was a known figure to federal law enforcement. In 2020, a year after Elena's body was found, the FBI had conducted a massive raid on that very property. The raid was the culmination of a long-term investigation into a sophisticated sex trafficking ring that operated across several states, preying on young women. Landon was identified as a key player, a facilitator who used his wealth and properties to groom, control, and exploit his victims. He was arrested, and the case sent shockwaves through the affluent community. The timing was crucial. The trafficking ring was active during the exact period Elena was missing, the lost year between her disappearance from Phoenix and the discovery of her body. The location of the mansion provided a potential answer to the question of where she had been. It suggested she wasn't just with a bad boyfriend. She had been drawn into the orbit of a dangerous criminal organization. The mansion was likely her gilded cage, a place of luxury and terror, where her life was completely controlled. The expensive dental work and the professional tattoo now made a different, more sinister kind of sense. They weren't acts of love. They were investments made by her captors to maintain the value of their asset. This connection transformed the case from a potential domestic homicide into a key piece of a much larger federal investigation. Elena's death was no longer an isolated event, but a potential consequence of her entanglement with Landon's trafficking operation. The investigators theorized that Elena was groomed online by someone working for Landon, lured away with promises of a glamorous life with a wealthy boyfriend. Once she was in California, isolated from her family and support system, she would have been trapped. The beautiful estate was not a home, it was a prison with a beautiful facade, and Mark Landon was its warden. The FBI's 2020 raid on Mark Landon's estate had yielded a treasure trove of evidence, including ledgers, laptops, and a collection of burner phones. At the time of the raid, investigators were focused on building their case against Landon and his network, and the evidence was catalogued in relation to known victims and associates. Now, with Elena's name attached to the case, federal agents and Tehama County detectives began a joint effort to re-examine every piece of evidence seized from that mansion, looking for any link, no matter how small, to Elena Reyes. They were searching for a ghost in a machine that had been powered down for 2 years. Their painstaking search paid off. Buried within a digital ledger found on one of Landon's encrypted hard drives was a list of names. Most were aliases, first names or nicknames used to obscure the identities of the women associated with the ring. One name on that list jumped out at them: Ella Vega. The Reyes family, in their interviews with detectives, had mentioned that Elena had sometimes used online usernames that played on her name. Ella was a common one. While Vega was new, the combination was plausible and fit the pattern. It was the first tangible thread connecting Elena to the inner workings of Landon's criminal enterprise. The discovery of the alias prompted a deeper dive into the seized burner phones. Investigators began cross-referencing call logs and text messages associated with the name Ella Vega. They found one burner phone that had been in contact with a number known to belong to Landon in late 2018, right around the time Elena's own phone went silent. The communications were brief and cryptic, discussing travel arrangements to Northern California. Suddenly, Elena's last text to her family, vague but reassuring, seemed less like messages from a daughter and more like scripted communications, perhaps sent under duress or fed to her by her handler. This evidence painted a damning picture of a calculated operation. Elena was not just a girl who ran away, she was a target. She was assigned an alias, Ella Vega, to erase her true identity. Her personal phone was discarded and replaced with a burner phone controlled by the network. This was a standard tactic in trafficking operations, designed to sever a victim's ties to their past and make them completely dependent on their captors. The girl her family knew as Elena Reyes ceased to exist, replaced by Ella Vega, a name in a trafficker's ledger. The mansion connection was no longer a theory, it was a near certainty, supported by digital evidence that placed her directly in Landon's control. The confirmation that Elena Reyes was likely Ella Vega from Mark Landon's ledger opened up a new and terrifying line of inquiry for the FBI. Her murder was now viewed as a possible component of a much larger criminal conspiracy. Investigators began to re-interview other women who had been rescued from Landon's trafficking ring or had been associated with it. They showed them photos of Elena, asking if they recognized her as Ella Vega or by any other name. They were hoping someone would remember her, could provide details about her time at the mansion, or could shed light on the circumstances that might have led to her death. The fear among these potential witnesses was palpable. Many were still traumatized and afraid of retaliation from Landon's associates who were still at large. However, a few women, speaking to investigators under conditions of anonymity, provided fragmented but crucial information. They spoke of a hierarchy within the mansion, where compliance was rewarded and defiance was brutally punished. One woman vaguely recalled a girl named Ella who had become problematic. She had started to resist, to question things, and had talked about wanting to go home. In the world they lived in, such behavior was not tolerated. It was a death sentence. This testimony led to a chilling but logical theory. Elena, trapped and exploited for months, may have tried to escape or threatened to expose the operation. For a high-level trafficker like Mark Landon, a single defiant victim could bring down his entire multi-million-dollar empire. Silencing her would have been a cold, calculated business decision. Her murder and secret burial were not an act of passion, but a necessary measure to protect the organization. The fresh rose tattoo took on an even darker meaning in this context. Perhaps it was a final attempt to placate her, a gift before her disposal, or a brand to mark her even in death. The FBI now considers the Jane Doe case to be inextricably linked to their ongoing investigation into Landon and his network. They're exploring the possibility that Elena was not his only victim to be permanently silenced. Her case file is being cross-referenced with other unsolved disappearances and homicides of young women across California, Nevada, and Arizona during the same time frame. Elena's story, unearthed by a TikTok comment, has become a key that could potentially unlock a series of interconnected murders. Unraveling the truth of what happened to Elena Reyes may be the first step in uncovering a puzzle of much darker crimes and finally delivering justice for victims whose voices have been silent for far too long. The most prominent and honestly, the most chilling theory strongly supported by the evidence is that Elena Reyes fell victim to the sophisticated sex trafficking ring operated by Mark Landon. This theory suggests that Elena was not a runaway in the traditional sense, but was instead a target. Her recruitment likely began online, where a predator working as part of Landon's network identified her as a vulnerable young woman. This individual would have spent time building a relationship with her, grooming her with promises of love, wealth, and a glamorous new life in California. The boyfriend she mentioned to her family was likely a fabrication, a fictional character created to lure her away from the safety of her home and into the clutches of the organization. Once in California and isolated at Landon's estate, Elena would have been stripped of her identity and autonomy. The alias El Vega, found in Landon's ledger, supports the idea that she was systematically dehumanized, her name changed to sever her connection to her past. The burner phone she was given would have been her only link to the outside world, a link that was completely controlled by her captors. In this terrifying environment, the expensive dental work and the fresh tattoo were not signs of care, but rather calculated investments. They were tools to maintain her appearance for the purposes of exploitation, ensuring she remained a valuable asset for the trafficking ring and its high-paying clientele. This theory suggests that Elena's murder was not a crime of passion, but a cold, pragmatic business decision. After months of captivity, it's plausible that Elena began to resist, fight back, or make plans to escape. Her defiance would have made her a liability to an organization that thrived on control and secrecy. A single victim threatening to go to the authorities could have unraveled the entire multi-million-dollar operation. From Landon's perspective, eliminating that threat would have been a necessary, albeit brutal, step to protect his enterprise. Her death was a message and a means of self-preservation for a ruthless criminal network. The disposal of her body further aligns with this theory. The shallow grave, the cheap sheet, and the remote location all point to a hurried but deliberate effort to erase her existence. It was not the work of a panicked individual, but of someone with experience in making problems disappear. The members of Landon's ring would have had the resources and the cold-blooded mindset to carry out such an act, ensuring that Ella Vega would never be found, and that her story would never be told. Eleanor's death in this scenario was the final tragic outcome of a system designed to exploit and discard human lives for profit. A second, slightly different theory focuses more intensely on the personal dynamics of a manipulative relationship, casting Elena as a victim of a single, highly controlling individual rather than a large organization. In this scenario, the mysterious boyfriend she left home for was a real person, perhaps Mark Landon himself or a close associate. This individual would have been a master manipulator, a classic groomer who showered Elena with attention and affection, promising her a life she just couldn't refuse. He would have systematically isolated her from her family and friends, convincing her that he was the only person she could trust and rely upon, creating a world that revolved entirely around him. Within this toxic relationship, the signs of care, like the dental work and the rose tattoo, could be interpreted as acts of possessive control, disguised as love. The tattoo, in particular, might have been presented as a romantic gesture, a symbol of their bond, while in reality serving as a brand, a permanent mark of his ownership over her. Life inside the mansion would have been a gilded cage where every luxury came with a price, her freedom. Her communications would have been monitored, her movements restricted, and her sense of self slowly eroded until she became completely dependent on her captor. The motive for murder in this theory is more personal, yet no less brutal. The relationship may have soured when Elena began to see through the facade of love and luxury. Perhaps she discovered the true nature of her boyfriend's activities, or maybe she simply grew tired of the control and expressed a desire to leave him and return home. For a pathologically controlling individual, the loss of power is an existential threat. Her decision to leave would not have been seen as a breakup, but as an ultimate betrayal, an act of defiance that could not be tolerated. Her murder would have been the final, horrific act of control. If he could not have her, no one could. The disposal of her body in this context would be the act of a man trying to cover up a personal crime. While still calculated, it might have been driven more by panic and a desperate need to avoid capture than by cold organizational protocol. He would have wrapped her in a sheet from the house, driven her to a remote location he knew and buried her, believing his secret was safe. This theory paints a picture of a deeply disturbed individual who saw Elena not as a partner, but as a possession, an object to be cherished when compliant and discarded when she was no longer useful to him. While most evidence points toward the Jane Doe being Elena Reyes, a third, more remote theory raises the unsettling possibility of mistaken identity or maybe even a deliberate deception. This theory suggests that the body found in Tehama County is not Elena, but rather another young woman who, by a remarkable coincidence, bore a striking resemblance to her and happened to have the same tattoo. In this scenario, Elena Reyes could still be alive somewhere, perhaps having successfully started a new life off the grid, completely unaware that her identity has become entangled in a homicide investigation. It's a slim possibility, but one that cannot be entirely dismissed until a full, conclusive DNA match is legally confirmed. This theory would require a complex and almost unbelievable series of coincidences. Not only would another woman have to look like Elena, but she would also have to have a nearly identical rose tattoo on her right ankle. Furthermore, her dental records would have to align almost perfectly with Elena's. While the odds are astronomically against this, the world of cold cases is filled with strange and improbable events. The partial familial DNA match could potentially be explained by a previously unknown relative, though this is highly speculative. The family's identification based on photos could be an honest mistake, born from years of grief and a desperate desire for answers. Another, more sinister version of this theory suggests a deliberate plot to use Elena's identity. Could the real killer have known Eleanor or known of her disappearance? It's possible that the victim was another woman from Landon's circle, and that the killer or the organization intentionally planted clues to link the body to the missing girl from Arizona. This would be a sophisticated act of misdirection, designed to send investigators down the wrong path, away from the victim's true identity and therefore away from the killer. By framing the murder around a known missing person, they could muddy the waters and complicate the investigation for years. While this theory is the least likely of the three, it highlights the critical importance of waiting for the final, verified scientific results. Without a 100% confirmed DNA match, a sliver of doubt remains. For the Reyes family, this possibility represents both a faint, desperate hope and a source of continued uncertainty. Could Elena still be out there? Or is the evidence pointing exactly where it seems to be, toward the tragic end of their daughter's life? Until science provides the final word, the question of identity, however small, lingers in the background of this complex and heartbreaking case. Regardless of which theory proves to be correct, they all revolve around a central haunting enigma, the mystery of Elena's lost year. There is a gap of approximately 10 months between her last contact with her family in the fall of 2018 and the estimated time of her death in the summer of 2019. This period is, honestly, a complete black box. Where was she living? Who were her associates? What was the nature of her daily life? The answers to these questions are crucial not only to understanding what happened to her, but also to identifying her killer. This lost year holds the key to the entire case. During this time, Elena was transformed. She went from being the girl her family knew in Phoenix to the woman whose body was discovered in Northern California. The most tangible evidence of this transformation is the rose tattoo, which she acquired during this hidden period. The story behind that tattoo is a critical, unanswered question. Was it a symbol of her new life, a mark of coercion, or something else entirely? Finding the tattoo artist who inked it on her skin could provide a physical location, a timeline, and potentially a description of the person she was with. That artist is a key witness who has yet to be found. Investigators are also trying to piece together her movements during this year. Did she stay in one place, confined to Landon's estate? Or did she travel? The trafficking ring was known to operate across state lines, and it's possible Elena was moved between different locations in California, Arizona, or Nevada. Tracing her path is a monumental task, especially since she was likely using an alias and a burner phone. Any witness who saw her during this time, a neighbor, a store clerk, another victim, could hold a piece of the puzzle. They might remember Ella Vega, or a quiet young woman who seemed scared or out of place. Ultimately, understanding the lost year is about understanding Elena's state of mind. Was she a willing participant who only later realized her mistake, or was she a prisoner from the very beginning? Did she make any attempts to reach out for help that went unnoticed? These are the human questions that lie beneath the forensic evidence. Reconstructing her experiences during those 10 months is essential for delivering justice. Her killer is someone who was part of that secret life, and until investigators can shine a light into that dark year, the person responsible for her death will remain shielded by the shadows. The ultimate and most pressing unanswered question in this case is the identity of the person who killed Elena Reyes. While Mark Landon is the prime suspect due to his connection to the mansion and the trafficking ring, he was already in federal custody on other charges when Elena's identity came to light. Building a homicide case against him would require direct evidence linking him to her murder, not just her exploitation. Proving he gave the order to have her killed is a high legal bar to clear, especially if the act was carried out by one of his subordinates. The challenge for prosecutors is to connect the man at the top to the hands that committed the crime. This leads to the possibility that the killer was not Landon himself, but another individual within his criminal network. It could have been an enforcer, a lower-level associate tasked with handling problems. This person would have been responsible for the physical act of the murder and the disposal of the body. Identifying this individual would be incredibly difficult, as they would be a ghost within a secretive organization, their loyalty ensured by fear and mutual criminality. Investigators would likely need one of Landon's other associates to break the code of silence and testify against the killer in exchange for a deal, a risky and uncertain prospect. There is also the chance that the killer was someone outside of Landon's direct control, but still connected to the world Eleanor was in. It could have been a client, someone who frequented the mansion and to whom Eleanor was trafficked. An encounter with a violent or unstable client could have turned deadly, with the organization then stepping in to clean up the mess and dispose of the body to protect their business and their clientele. In this scenario, the killer could be a wealthy and powerful individual, someone with the resources to ensure their involvement remained a secret, making the path to justice even more complicated. Finally, the theory of the possessive individual groomer cannot be discounted. If Eleanor was involved with just one man, then he is the sole killer. This theory simplifies the number of suspects, but relies on identifying a man whose existence was a mystery to everyone in Elena's life. Without a name or a face, he remains a phantom. The FBI and local detectives are now faced with the monumental task of sifting through these possibilities. Every piece of evidence from Landon's estate, every new witness testimony is being analyzed for clues that point to a specific individual. For the Reyes family, this is the final answer they need. Who took their daughter's life, and will they ever be held accountable? The story of the Tehama County Jane Doe began in silence, with a secret buried in the lonely woods off Highway 36. For 3 years, she was a ghost in the truest sense, a nameless, faceless entity whose story was a void. She was a case file, a set of contradictory clues, and a source of deep frustration for the investigators sworn to find her name. The discovery of her body was a tragedy, but the ensuing silence was a second ongoing injustice, erasing her from the world as surely as the dirt that covered her grave. Her identity was a puzzle with missing pieces, a mystery that seemed destined to remain unsolved, another sad statistic in the national crisis of the unidentified. Then, through the unlikely channels of social media, a single comment from a determined cousin cracked the silence wide open. The ghost was given a potential name: Eleanor Reyes. This breakthrough, driven by the power of crowdsourced sleuthing, transformed the entire investigation. It bridged the gap between a cold case in California and a missing persons file in Arizona, connecting two disparate tragedies into one coherent, heartbreaking narrative. The journey from a Jane Doe to Elena Reyes was a testament to modern technology's ability to give a voice to the voiceless, proving that no case is ever truly cold as long as someone, somewhere, is still looking for answers and willing to speak up. With her identity now all but certain, the young woman in the morgue is no longer a passive victim of fate. She has become a vengeful ghost, her story now haunting the man and the criminal network believed to be responsible for her demise. The confirmation of her name has breathed new life into the federal case against Mark Landon and his trafficking ring, turning a potential witness into a murder victim. Her case strengthens the prosecution's ability to demonstrate the extreme violence and depravity of the organization, ensuring that the full scope of their crimes is brought to light. The secrets they tried to bury with her are now being unearthed one by one. The case has been officially reopened, infused with new urgency and a wealth of new leads. Investigators are no longer searching for a name, but for a killer. They are meticulously re-examining every piece of evidence from Landon's mansion, re-interviewing every known associate, and searching for the missing links that will connect the order to the act. The ghost of Highway 36 is no longer waiting to be found. She is actively pointing the way, her story a roadmap leading detectives deeper into a world of exploitation and murder. Her silence has finally been broken, replaced by a demand for justice that echoes from beyond the grave. The confirmation of Elena's identity has provided the Reyes family with a devastating form of closure. The agonizing uncertainty of not knowing has been replaced by the brutal certainty of their loss. They now know that their daughter did not simply run away to start a new life. She was lured into a predator's web, her independence twisted into imprisonment and her future stolen from her. While the pain of her death is immense, having her name restored is a crucial step. She's no longer a nameless victim in a faraway county. She is Eleanor, their daughter, sister and cousin, a beloved girl whose memory they can now properly honor. This case serves as a stark and terrifying reminder of the dangers that lurk in the digital world. Elena's story is a cautionary tale for every family, highlighting how easily predators can use the anonymity of the internet to groom and isolate vulnerable young people. The promise of a glamorous life with a new boyfriend was a carefully constructed illusion, a trap laid online that led to a real-world nightmare. It underscores the critical importance of open communication within families about online safety and the need to be vigilant against those who exploit trust and youthful optimism for their own sinister purposes. Eleanor's fate is a tragic illustration of the real-world consequences of online deception. Beyond the immediate tragedy, Eleanor's case has become a powerful catalyst for change and public involvement. It has demonstrated in a viral and highly visible way that ordinary citizens have the power to make a difference in unsolved cases. The single TikTok comment that broke this case open has inspired countless others to look more closely at the thousands of Jane and John Doe cases that remain unresolved. It has reinforced the mission of online sleuthing communities, validating their efforts and encouraging them to continue their work. True crime is not just entertainment, it is a collaborative effort where every share, every comment and every tip has the potential to bring a name to the nameless. The echoes of Elena's lost life will continue to resonate not just within her family but across the landscape of criminal justice. Her story will be told in police academies and forensic seminars as a case study in the power of combining traditional investigation with modern open-source intelligence. It is a powerful example of how a single digital breadcrumb can lead investigators through the darkest of mazes. While her life was cut tragically short, the story of how her name was found will live on, a legacy that may help bring other lost souls home and provide answers to other grieving families still waiting in silence. The investigation into Elena Reyes's murder is active and ongoing, a complex puzzle with many missing pieces. While Mark Landon remains the central figure, the question of who specifically carried out her murder is still unanswered. The FBI, in collaboration with local law enforcement, is urging the public to continue to provide information. They believe that there are still people out there who knew Elena as Ella Vega, who saw her at the mansion, or who were part of Landon's network. No tip is too small or insignificant. Someone knows the identity of the killer, and their voice is the final key needed to unlock full justice for Elena. This case highlights a crucial truth. The pursuit of justice is a marathon, not a sprint. It requires the relentless dedication of law enforcement, the unwavering hope of a family, and the collective attention of the public. For years, Elena's case was a forgotten file, but now it is a priority, driven by the momentum of its rediscovery. The path forward is clear: to hold every single person involved in her exploitation and death accountable, from the man at the top of the organization to the individual who dug her shallow grave. Securing convictions will be a long and arduous process, but it is a necessary one to ensure that such atrocities are not repeated. For the Reyes family, the journey is far from over. They have found their daughter, but they have not yet found peace. That will only come when those responsible for her death are standing in a courtroom held accountable for their actions. Their wait continues, but now it is a wait imbued with hope, a hope for a trial, a conviction, and a final legal recognition of the crime that was committed. They have become powerful advocates, their grief transformed into a demand for justice, not only for Elena, but for all victims of trafficking whose stories are never told. Their strength is a testament to their love for their daughter. The case of Eleanor Reyes began as a mystery and became a tragedy. Now it stands as a symbol of hope. It is a testament to the fact that even after years of silence, truth can emerge from the most unexpected places. It is a call to action for all of us to pay attention, to stay engaged, and to remember the names and faces of the missing and the unidentified. Justice for Elena Reyes will be a victory for every family that has ever lost a loved one to the shadows. As we await the final chapter of her story, we hold on to the hope that complete closure is within reach, and that her memory will finally be honored not by how she died, but by the powerful light her story has shone on the darkness.